Hello again and welcome everybody to what I'm calling my organic sequencer, or OS, not operating system. So I've developed this, I've tweaked the UI a little bit to make it a little bit more inviting. And what you can do, you can click and drag your own audio samples into this playlist region. However, I have made some presets. We've got sample 1, which is I think a clap, more percussion, and some blatant more percussion. The original idea was to trigger MIDI with audio in an organic fashion. So I've put in some bird calls. So we've got a little stint, which has got some fantastic transients here. We've got a red grouse, we've got a little bit of silence in the middle, and a quail call. And again, I chose this one for these lovely sharp transients. And you can click through these and choose whichever one you fancy. Now, you do not hear this audio. You are encouraged to go and source your own audio, click and drag it in. But these presets are here just to get you started and get an idea. So on the left-hand side, we've got our gain slider. So if we bring that right down and we click play here, actually, before you click play, hit loop. So we've got some continuous audio. You click play, and now we're cycling through this common quail call. Again, you're not going to hear this, but if we bring this gain up, this is going to start triggering our MIDI, which is quite exciting. This is done all under the hood. I'll show you in a minute. And what we're going to do now, these are gates, so we can turn the steps, I should say, off. So I'm going to keep them all on. So we've got these steps that are just going to keep on firing. We've got our notes here, which you can change, of course. That's still triggering, which I need to get around. And of course, our velocity here, which starts at 100, of course, up to 127 and down to 1. So you have some good control. So let's start playing with this. So I'm going to click off for now. What we're going to do on here is we're going to get drift. It's one of my favorite instruments at the moment. And if we click play, no, not the transport. So the next idea is linking this play button to the transport. So when you hit the space bar, it will play automatically. Let's bring this right down again. Fantastic, it is working. So let's just attenuate this a little bit and make. There we go. So that is it is a quantized groove. So let's get something organic. Let's go for the quail call. Let's bring this gain down. We'll click play. Bring the gain up and loop it. So the higher you have this gain, the more sensitive it will be. So if I put it to the max, that should let through every transient. Which it looks like it is. Now, the next step is recording this. Of course, you can just pipe that audio to another track, and you've got your organic rhythm, and we've re-synthesized it, which is fantastic. So that rhythm has come from a quail out in the open, out in nature, which is a lovely idea. But what's another idea is a university peer that gave me is what if we could capture that raw MIDI and maybe save that for other compositions? You can do that at the moment. Now, what's a little frustrating is you can't do it on the same track. So what I've done here is I've got a drift, same again. And what we want to do is send the MIDI to that track. So we're going to say MIDI from OS. There we go. So if we hit play, no, not that play. I really need to get around this. It confuses me a lot. There we go. And we've got some MIDI pinging. And we can see here, it's actually coming up. So there we go. So what we can do now is hit record, and that should just capture the raw MIDI. And then click play. So we're getting these really quick fluctuations. That's come from a quail, it's come from a bird, and I find that quite fascinating. If you were to put that in a composition, of course, it's not going to sound great straight away. So you would have to manipulate it a little bit. which presents an argument, well, is that rhythm still organic? No, it's not, because you have manipulated it and taken it from its original form. But this is a tool for rhythm composition and inspiration, and to generate new ideas. I think in music that, especially electronic music, can be quite predictable. So let's make some new fluctuations and some new rhythms and just effects. This is a creative tool. It's not a device where you choose a preset, you click play, and you've got a rhythm. You're the one who puts the work in, and I think that's the most special part. So now we have this MIDI here, and consolidate it. And if I take that away and this one, I think that's amazing. That's come from nature, and the threshold has been set to 10 milliseconds, so it should be now much more accurate. What we could do is get that file and put it underneath, and then you could see the transients. I have started to try and quantize when this MIDI is triggered, which has been much more difficult than I thought. I've used a, let's see what I've used. Let's get in under the hood and have a look. So, this is the very first max patch I've made, and it's been quite a journey. So we're using a playlist, of which is storing all of my samples. Those are consolidated all into my project here. So this should be playable on other computers. I've tested it with some samples, and it does recall those samples. They're all consolidated. So this is the little matrix. Well, it's not a matrix object, that's a preset object. That's storing all of the presets. Of course, we've got a gain here, and that's coming through a pcam, which I've set to 10 milliseconds, so that's not much at all. I think that's enough, because when you put the gain to its max, it is pretty much letting through every transient, as we can hear. Now, going on to the quantization, that was the hardest part. And I was playing around with a lot of different objects. Of course, before implementing this, I built a clock which worked, and it's linked to Ableton's transport. So you hit play and it's playing straight away. That's why I introduced these two displays here, so you can see the metronome, live transport, and you can see the audio that's being triggered. So this actually gave me a good representation of how well the quantization is working. It's not working perfectly at the moment, but I'm moving on to the next step. I'm not going to dwell on this too long. I will come back at a later date and refine the quantization. But how am I quantizing it? So we've got a gate here. When you click that gate, that's going to turn it towards my one bang. This is a simple object, but much more powerful than I anticipated. I actually started with this, disregarded it, found loads more objects which probably had a bit more power than the one bang, but they just didn't suit to my needs. One example was connecting my clock straight to the counter here, but then that was just banging the next steps in this sequencer, which was overriding the audio. So I've set up a one bang object. So what that does is every time a bang comes through the right channel, another one is let through the left. So think of the left as all of our audio to MIDI, and then the right, this is just acting like a gate. So when you hit play, the transport is clocking away, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have our beat divisions here. So when a metronome beat hits, that last beat that came from our audio is let through, but not perfectly. So let's have a little play with that. Again, it doesn't work perfectly, but it's actually a fun tool as well, to just generate fun ideas. So let's hit play. First of all, play on this one. Cool. Loop it. Deselect these. I should initiate these to start as open. There we go. So that's because I had my quantize on, and that's why it wasn't working. So it's another step I need to make is when the quantize is on, it won't be playing at all, but you can see the metronome's going. So let's put the metronome on. We can also see it visually clocking away. I'm going to put it onto 1N for the time being, So it's going to let through, or it's supposedly going to let through a beat on the first beat. So if we bring this down and bring this up, let's just look visually. There, nice. See, that was off. That one wasn't bad. Let's go to 16 in. Okay, let's record that and see what happens. There we go. So I'm going to go from here because that was the first beat of the bar. You can see it is definitely off, but like I say, for the time being, I'm moving on to the next step, because if I don't, I'll never get anywhere. So let's listen what happened here. And add the rhythm. Again, it's another generative tool for inspiration. I'm just using a synth here. By all means, put on percussion, put on hi-hats, really nice skippy hi-hats, put on a kick drum. Really, your imagination is your limit. What's interesting is the chap who suggested being able to grab the MIDI straight from this is you could trigger external devices, which I'll be doing in another video, which is really exciting because you can click and drag in your organic audio, birdsong, spoken word, but whatever you collect in your audio, you click and drag that in, you hit play, and that could trigger your external MIDI device. And it's quite fascinating to think Birdcool is actually manipulating your MIDI device. So thank you for watching. This is the organic sequencer. It's coming along nicely. Of course, we've got the, just to recap, this is our playlist function with some presets. You can, of course, click and drag in your own samples here. These are the steps, which you can see clocking through. It's nice to have that visual aspect. These are gates, so you can turn some of the gates off to your choosing. We do have down here C3. Those are our notes. This is a click and drag function. It might be nice to have a drop-down menu, and that's another thing I need to fix. Is when you change the note, it actually triggers like that. I don't want that. And of course, our velocity down here with a full range. We have our quantize clock on or off. We've got our beat divisions just here. This is just merely a visual thing for myself. I might get rid of that just to make it look neater. We've got our metronome, which is coming off the transport, and our audio trigger, which is what our audio is. So thank you for watching. Any feedback is greatly appreciated.